Welcome back to another episode of Words with Ward. Today I interview Monica Fry, the founder of DFW Catholic Speed Dating. This is a very fruitful conversation regarding Catholic dating culture, social media, and just socializing in the modern world. I recommend that you go and give her some support on her social media platforms, her podcast, and the Catholic Speed Dating Initiative. I'm linking all those in the show notes. Even if you're one of the lucky people that has a special someone in their life, this podcast is worth listening to, and she is worth supporting. If you like this podcast, please follow the Instagram at Words with Ward Show and click follow on this podcast no matter where you're listening. I have some exciting news coming out, and you'll want to hear it. This is the Words with Ward Show. I'm your host, Tyler Ward. Monica, thank you for being on the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Tyler.
So we're going to get into a lot of things I want to talk about today. You do quite a bit. But first, can you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Monica. I'm a certified Catholic coach from Metanoia Catholic. And the main thing I do is I help singles find their person. But I do a lot more than that. I grew up Catholic. I didn't really choose the faith for myself until I went to college at Texas A&M. But when I was there, I absolutely fell in love with Jesus and the faith and chose the faith for myself. And I realized that more than anything, more than what I went to college for, more than what I can do, the most important thing to me was my vocation and being a wife and a mom. But then I graduated and ran into a lot of obstacles with that. And that's when I discovered that there needed to be an intervention with the dating scene. But amidst that, I got rid of my smartphone and became fully digital minimalist. I deleted my social media and I got rid of my smartphone at the time. My personal social media, that is. And amidst that digital minimalism journey, I discovered a lot of being human skills that Gen Z lacks because I lacked them and I grew up with a smartphone. And so that launched into a digital minimalism and digital wellness journey and helping other people connect with other people, which then led to me running speed dating events because one of the major ways that dating is being done is online, and I didn't want to go online to find someone. And with learning all I was learning, I was like, there could be in-person alternatives. So I started offering speed dating events, which led me to my singles initiative that I now run full time. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. That's to make a very long story short.
Well, we'll try to unpack it a little bit more. I definitely want to get into all the speed dating and digital minimalist stuff you talked about. But you mentioned early on that you grew up Catholic and then you didn't really choose the faith for yourself until college. Can you kind of explain what that looked like? Is there like a moment that you can identify where everything kind of switched on or that?
Yeah, it's a really hilarious story because if I were to summarize it in one sentence, I would say a Baptist summer camp made me Catholic. Which I'll share the story behind that. So I was graduating from high school and I used to, for 6 years before, I attended a secular all-girls summer camp in North Carolina every single summer. I grew really passionate about that summer camp because it's where I learned age-appropriate independence as a teenager and learned how to make decisions as an adult, that when you make decisions at summer camp, there's no real consequence. Like, oh, how am I gonna have any repercussions from choosing rock climbing instead of canoeing at summer camp? So, but it's like you don't have cell phones and you don't have access. Mom and dad aren't there, and you have to just learn how to make decisions on your own, which is a skill that I didn't realize until I was an adult. That's huge. But
Hmm.
I learned healthy independence and learned a lot of very valuable soft skills at summer camp, and it was also the most fun time. And I wanted to be a counselor. Well, I got rejected my senior year of high school, and it absolutely tore me apart.
Yeah.
One of my high school friends at the time, he knows how much I love camp because everyone at my high school could tell you it was like the thing I lived and breathed by because all I talked about was how much I love summer camp. And he invited me to his church's summer camp, and he didn't frame it as like, hey, come to my church camp. He said, come to my summer camp. And I went into it expecting the outdoorsy, activity oriented summer camp that I grew up going to. But then I show up to a Baptist church camp, and I am the only person that doesn't know anything that they're talking about. Like I
Yeah.
grew up Catholic, but I couldn't tell you where the books in the Bible were. I couldn't even quote major verses like John 3:16 or Romans 2:12, like the verses that like everyone, or Proverbs 3:5, like the verses that everyone just knows without thinking if they're in faith circles. I didn't know anything. And they sensed that, and they were like, did you grow up, with Jesus? And I was like, well, I was Catholic. And of course they were like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity. So I got slammed by everyone at that camp with all the questions like, do you have a
Yeah.
relationship with Jesus? Are you saved? Do you want to be saved? And all these things. And I didn't know anything. And
Yeah.
I left that camp being very uneasy. I was like, I feel like I should have known how to answer those questions.
Yeah.
So that was summer 2019. The church camp was in June, and oh, you bet the rest of the summer I was googling everything. I was reading the Bible for the first time ever, and mainly so I could finally answer these questions that these people that were continuing to text me and follow up with me over the summer were asking me. And then I went to college, and all I knew was I needed to continue to search,
Yeah.
but I was very unbiased about whether or not I went to a Protestant church or a Catholic church. And at the time, I couldn't even tell you what the difference between the two were. I used to say, oh, everyone's Christian. We all believe the same thing. Like, there's no difference. I used to say that. I don't say that anymore. But I realized the first couple of weeks I was at A&M that everything was new to me but mass. So classes were new. Being away from home was new, not really, because like I said, I grew up going to summer camp, but still being away as an adult with the first time that like the choices I make actually matter was
Yeah. The
new. And
repercussions are there. Yeah.
yeah, like the being surrounded by people that were making choices different than you, and you had to learn how to defend your choices was new. Like everything was new. The dorm was new, the food was new, the people were new, everything was new except mass. And I remember the first Sunday that I was at A&M, I went to mass out of habit because it's all I knew. Like I went to
Yeah.
mass, and I remember the first couple of weeks of going to mass, I was like, I feel like this is the one thing that's constant. So that's why I kept going to mass, even though at the time I wasn't even sure if I believed the Catholic faith or if I believed the Baptist faith or if I believed another denomination. I wasn't sure yet, but I was continuing to go to mass. And I would say after 6 months of that, I came to a place where I was like, yeah, I'm Catholic because it's the truth, not
Mm.
because I grew up Catholic.
Hmm.
And then I went home for Christmas break, and everyone that I went to church camp with that one summer was like asking me how was keeping a relationship with Christ like your first semester, and I was like, it was great. They were like, oh, we should grab coffee and talk about it. And then of course they were shell shocked when I was like, I'm Catholic till the day I die. They were like, how did you come to that conclusion? Which I was very excited to tell them how I came to that conclusion,
Yeah.
but that's a little bit of in a nutshell, like how I became super passionate about the Catholic faith.
It's a
And
great story.
it's a lot more than just the one sentence summarization, but
Yeah, no, I think that rings true for a lot of people. We know in the
Mhm.
Catechism it talks about the Eucharist being the source and summit of our faith. And one thing I tell a lot of people that feel like they're too out of touch with the practice, or they haven't
Mhm.
been to mass in a while, they haven't prayed in a while. I'm like, just start with going to mass.
Yeah.
And I mean, perhaps you won't receive communion because you're not in good standing that time, but go to mass and it's an encounter. The more encounters you have, the more you kind of recognize that truth. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I realized too that when I was at that church camp and we were doing like mega church praise and worship night, like at an amphitheater with all these flashing lights and stage lights, I couldn't explain it, but everyone was like singing their heart out, and I was like, something's missing. I don't know what it is,
mhm,
but that's what I would tell people when they would ask me, like, oh, how did you feel at encounter night? And I'm like, I felt like something was missing. I'm missing
yeah,
something. And of course, they would say, what you're missing is that you haven't got like accepted the altar call. But I was like, no, that's not it. But
the
then,
altar
like,
call with no altar. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Well, it's like, and then of course, when I went home for Christmas break, I could say what was missing was the Eucharist. And the reason why I felt at home and I felt like this is the one thing that doesn't change when I went to Sunday Mass in college versus when I went to that church camp is it was the Eucharist. Like that's the constant.
mhm,
And frankly, the Catholic faith, I came to a place where I was like, I believe it's the truth, and that's why I'm Catholic. I'm not Catholic because of the feelings or because it's my preference, or I mean, it is my preference because it's the truth, but like feelings and all that are great, and like I mean, I became a Catholic coach, and our feelings do have a place, but they have to be subject to the intellect and the will, like the
yeah,
subject to the intellect and the will. That's where the feelings belong. But and so I could say that,
yeah.
and once I could say that and I was confident in that, and I was like, well, whether that's received well or not, it doesn't change what I'm gonna do. Like that's when I took ownership of my faith.
Very cool. Yeah, Aquinas talks about having not the passions be inflamed over the intellect and the reason. So,
Hmm.
um, I mean, I see a lot of times in those Protestant services, there's a lot going on.
Hmm.
It's crowded, but you're not filled at the same time
That's how I
because
felt. Exactly.
yeah,
Yes. And
um,
it's not just because of nostalgia. Like maybe
yeah,
nostalgia is why I started going to mass in college.
yeah.
But God used that. But that's not the reason I stayed going to mass in college because that nostalgia is going to wear off very quick.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It lasts until it becomes kind of habitual and part of your daily routine.
Yeah. If
Um,
nostalgia was why I went to mass in college, I wouldn't still be going to mass today.
exactly. And I think that speaks to a larger body of people as well. In fact, because you mentioned like mass being the only constant when you went off to college, but that's the beauty of the universal church is mass
Hmm.
is constant everywhere,
Hmm.
and no matter where you go, you have the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ there on the altar.
Absolutely. Hmm.
So that's awesome. You went to Texas A&M. You kind of answered this a little bit. I felt as though you probably went there because of a strong Catholic background, but you said you were still kind of unsure of like the differences between
Yeah.
Catholicism and Protestantism when you went there. So maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, a little bit. I had always known because my family's full of Aggies and I grew up in a
Okay.
Catholic family that A&M has a strong Catholic presence. But to be frank, I was encouraged to go to University of Dallas and I said absolutely not because I'm not staying in Dallas and I'm not going to a Catholic school.
Oh,
And then guess what? I ended up back in Dallas after college and the Catholic faith became my everything in college. So very, very I remember having that attitude as a teenager, being like, I'm going to do what I believe is right, not what you tell me to do.
mm,
Which I did come around, like, I believed that the Catholic faith was right, and that was why I was doing it, not because anyone was telling me to. I fell in love with the camaraderie and the traditions and everything about the atmosphere at A&M, and that's
yeah.
why I went. And it became very helpful to have that Catholic community there when I was searching because I started not just going to mass, the community at Texas A&M made me feel very welcome. And when I was honest that I didn't even know why I was there, they didn't hesitate or skip a beat. So I felt very much like, okay, I'm intimidated by all these people that are going to daily mass and are praying their rosaries and know about every saint. But I don't feel like they never made me feel inferior.
Mm.
And I wanted to be friends with them just on a human level.
Yeah.
So it's why that ended up becoming my social circle, even when I was not fully sure if that's what I believed yet, which
Yeah.
ended up being such a gift when I did come to the faith, because it's hard to be Catholic in college, and having the community I had, and with a good amount of those people I'm still dear friends with today, was something that I didn't realize until after college was something that's such a rarity, because it's harder to find that after college, which I discovered,
Yeah.
which we will get to.
Yeah.
But it's so funny. Like, people think I went to Texas A&M for the Catholic faith, but that's not the case at all. I was very much like, well, I'm Christian and I probably believe in Jesus. And there are a lot of other organizations that aren't Catholic that did stand out to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what ended up
Well,
happening.
praise God. I mean, He uses all those things for growing
Hmm.
His kingdom and according to His will.
Yeah.
And God bless your friends too for not making you feel inferior. That's a hard task to do, to like show you care and like when you're passionate about
Hmm.
something, but not be so not impose so much that it feels like you're judging them. So
They just lived out their faith. They just prayed their rosaries on campus, and they just went to daily mass, but they just practiced. They didn't preach, but their
mm,
practicing is what preached to me, because I was like, I don't see any other group of people this devoted to their faith than these people. Which is,
yeah.
I was like, if they're this devoted, there must be truth here.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. Um, okay, let's get into a little bit of the um, meeting people after college.
Okay,
It might require us going back to college for a second,
no worries.
regarding your experiences in the dating scene there. But you mentioned that you go to Texas A&M, you graduate, it's harder to meet people.
Very much, yes.
I just graduated from my undergrad. I'm now in my master's program, so I'm kind of like in a limbo period where it's like
Hmm.
there's people I'm still like going to class with, but master's programs are a little bit different,
Yeah.
where you kind of show up, talk a little bit, but then you leave. You don't live on campus with people or anything like that.
Hmm.
And I definitely have seen, especially with like friends from undergrad, they split off, go different directions. Being social is a lot more difficult.
Yes.
What was that experience like for you?
It was shocking. It shocked my system. I am the most social person I know. I always have been. God made me that way. I thrive when I'm around other people, when I'm socializing, when I'm meeting new people, when I'm catching up with people. But the first 4 months of post college completely shocked every being inside of me. A I had to come to the terms with the fact that it was never going to be as easy to meet people as it was in college, and that those years were behind me. As like,
Mm,
part of me wanted to go back to A&M and go
yeah,
back to school and get another degree just so I could have the people there, but I was like, that is not a good enough reason, because you're just prolonging the inevitable, which
yeah,
is being a full adult, right? Uh, and the other thing that shocked me was professional life is not as social as college life. So that, on top of the fact that Dallas, Texas, as a city, it's a lot harder to make the time and make the commutes during the week and put in the effort to meet new people and go to the places where new people are, and B, to actually have the energy to put in the effort when you're there, versus in College Station, where like meeting people, just it happens. You'd have to go out of your way to not meet new people
yeah,
in College
yeah.
Station. And then the other thing was, I graduated one semester early,
Hmm.
and my college relationship didn't work out. And I was seeing the Catholic community at my college has a very ring by spring culture.
Yes.
And so I was seeing all these engagement announcements on Instagram, and it was making me depressed, because I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I was happy for people, but I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I missed my one chance, because I was having a
Mm,
very hard time meeting people after college. I missed my one chance to find the thing I want the most. And that's the other thing. I noticed, why are you calling it a thing? Like, it's a person, it's not a thing. But find the one aspect of my life that I care about the absolute most, which is my vocation. I missed my one chance for that because I had this perception being on social media that everybody found that but me, and I missed my one chance because in the moment I wasn't making new friends, I wasn't meeting new people, I was having a hard time figuring out. I wasn't plugged into the group me's or the social scene yet. I didn't know anybody. And all of my best friends were 3 hours away in college living their lives, and I was
Yeah.
seeing it on Instagram. So the combo of those two things, I I just shut my Instagram down at what I thought was going to be just for Lent because
Mhm.
an Emily Wilson post about how she was logging off of Instagram for Lent made me be like, what if I logged off of Instagram and then Facebook and then Spotify and then YouTube? And then before I knew it, Lent was over and I had 6 apps on my phone. And then I was like, what if I just got rid of my smartphone? Which doing that was what it took for me to stop dwelling and ruminating and seething in my bitterness and start, like, I had no other choice but to go to adoration after work when I didn't have music on my phone, and I was not letting myself listen to music in the car. And what was I going to do? Sit at home and just sit there? Like, but that was what it took for me to finally start taking very small steps that over time compounded me to be very plugged into the Catholic community in Dallas.
Very cool. A lot of things I want to touch on there. I'm going to wait on the social stuff, on
Mm-hmm.
the digital stuff, because
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an important conversation of its own. But it seems like you're receiving a lot of messages from yourself and from others, perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
whenever the college relationship didn't work out. And you mentioned one of them being you missed your only chance. Um,
Yeah.
I also read in one of the articles you've written, should I have tried harder in college? These are messages I've thought of before. These are messages I've
Mm-hmm.
received.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are receiving these. Knowing what you know now, perhaps what are some other messages you received, and then how would you respond to those?
Yeah. Another message I received is actually a contrary message, which I think is equally as unhelpful, which is just put dating on hold and just figure yourself out. I
Mm,
think that is another message I was starting to
yeah,
hear
yeah.
when I did get out of my shell. And I find that equally as unhelpful, which I will explain in a second. Another message that I started hearing is you should do like a more specified, different, more specified versions of what I just said, which is you need to be fully this to get married. Like you need
Fully
to be fully out of
employed.
debt.
Yeah.
You need to be fully healed from all trauma. Like you need to be fully, if you need to fully know yourself, you need to be fully healed from this, or you need like all like name a checklist. Like you basically have to be a perfect person
Yeah.
before you can get married. So I heard that message, but then I'm like looking at my college friends that found their spouse in college, and I'm like, you're gonna tell me that they like you're. I would get so annoyed. He's like, you're gonna tell me, or oh, the kicker, you need to fully know God before you get married. And I'm like, well, then why do
Mm,
atheists get married? Like, why do agnostics manage to get married? Why, like, what? Like, I heard a lot of that, like even
yeah.
when I wasn't on social media, like, because I live in this world, like those messages are out there. I heard a lot of messages that weren't directly said but indirectly said, like in all these chastity talks that I started binge listening to in college. I would hear them say, this is how you should do it, like you should do this and this, or if you do. The indirect messages I heard from like the Catholic mainstream media is, if you do X you will get Y, like this chastity prosperity gospel almost, like
Yeah. Yeah.
if you follow this perfect formula you are guaranteed a happy marriage. If you follow this perfect formula you are guaranteed to dang, I'm hitting my pen, I'm so fired up. You will find a spouse by this age, like all this. And then it leaves the people that don't find their spouse early in life feel wondering if they're broken, if they did something wrong. um So a lot of messages like that. I definitely also heard a lot of messages of like, you're supposed to know if someone's your spouse instantly.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, like I've heard that from friends and from, media sources that like you're just supposed to know right away. But then I hear other people say you're not supposed to know right away. Like it takes time. And then so like I heard a lot of contradictory things and none of them help because everyone's story is unique and of course there's no a story that's already happened that is your story doesn't exist. So I think when we face uncertainty, we look for answers, but then none of the answers actually give us answers that are out there, like give us the answers. And
Yeah.
that's another, reason why I really did believe I'm like, Catholics don't need just another way to meet people. There's a gluttony of young adult groups in Dallas. There's all of these dating apps and new dating services and matchmaking services that are just booming.
Yeah.
They don't just need a way to meet people. The speed dating events just gave people matches and then sent them on their merry way. But singles need a rebuilding of structure and somebody that will listen to them more than talk at them. And that's what I offer in the services I offer beyond just helping them meet each other. I also offer accompaniment and a listening ear that they're not getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all messages I think listeners can resonate towards, or whether or not they're older demographics and they're like, yeah, I remember hearing that message. Although I do think it's probably changed. We
Yes.
see people getting married later, less frequently, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think I think the messages we tell ourselves a lot are the ones that you initially brought up. The I
Yeah.
missed my chance or should
Mm-hmm.
have tried harder. And those are really messages we're telling ourselves. But I do think a lot of the outside world is telling those other messages that
Yes.
you mentioned of wait, get everything figured out. And I agree,
Oh,
though. I think those are
don't do
equally harmful.
that.
And I'll have you answer on why you view that as being so harmful as well. But I find that contrary to the gospel,
Yeah.
being like needing to know God fully before you meet somebody. And if we look at the purpose of marriage, it's to help each other reach salvation.
Yeah.
So if you fully knew God already, you'd probably take St. Paul's argument and then just not
Exactly.
get married because at that point it would
Yeah.
be a distraction. Um,
It's so silly, yeah.
I also love like the um, it's almost like a check yourself in the gospel of like the
Mhm.
question of do you fully know God, and then you go. There's a lot of people that go, yeah, yeah, I do, and then I'm like, I think you're supposed to ask yourself that more with more scrutiny than just being like, yeah,
Yeah, and
no,
it's like if
but
I fully knew God, I would not be on earth, I don't think. Like I'm not gonna fully know God till I'm in heaven, so by that argument I should be in heaven before I find a spouse, but there's no spouses in heaven, so like that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
sure.
It's theologically inaccurate if you really dig into it.
Yeah, and then it kind of also sets you up in a mindset that your burdens and your problems as an individual are not worth you're not worth loving or caring for if you have those.
Mhm. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
if we're supposed to be reflecting the love that Christ gives us,
Yeah.
then that's contrary to the gospel as well.
Yeah.
And the person you find, and that is the person you end up eventually marrying. If that's the
Exactly,
vocation
yeah.
go, then they're going to reflect that same kind of love.
Mhm.
Um, and hopefully, that's the type of love you would show to your kids as well if the marriage bears that fruit.
Yeah.
Um, you also mentioned kind of the checklist. If you do X, you get Y. I see this a lot with people that do like novenas. I love
Mhm.
novenas, but they're like, if I pray this novena, then this thing will exactly happen. And at the end
Yeah.
of it, they're like waiting on the ninth day or the however long the novena is, and they're like, well, it's not
Yeah.
happened yet. And I'm like,
No. Yeah.
God's time, God's
I'm
time.
not against novenas in the fact that the church has them as a devotion for a reason. So like
Yeah,
I'm not going to be so arrogant that I dismiss an entire devotion of the church. But what I will dismiss is the way I noticed as a daughter of God I acted towards God when I prayed novenas
Hmm.
for a thing. Whether it was that's the thing, is like, yeah, why am I viewing my vocation as a thing when it's a person, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's like, Lord, I want to pray a novena so that I can work on my own interior life and for like my own, like the fruits that I'm really praying to receive in my own life. Yeah,
Hmm.
I want to pray for graces and fruits. There's nothing wrong if you have the right attitude of praying novenas for
Absolutely.
gifts, and there's nothing wrong with asking God for gifts. But I also noticed, and this is where like having good self-knowledge comes in. There's nothing wrong with asking God over and over and over for a spouse, because guess what? He wants us to continue asking him. Like, what is it? St. Catherine of Siena says that like, we pay God a compliment when we ask big things of him because we
Yeah.
believe he can do it.
Yeah.
And he never tires of hearing what we desire as his children. However, I noticed the more I started just asking God for a spouse and only focusing on that when I was praying, then it became this thing I cared more about than my relationship with God as a whole. So I
Yeah.
still did continue to ask God for a spouse, but I started noticing, is the way I'm praying hindering the attitude I want to have towards God first?
I like the way you put that, and that's why I love novenas. I pray them myself, but the reason I kind of mentioned that is this is where I tend to see the slip up happen, is
Uh-huh.
where the intention of your prayer becomes an idol
Exactly.
rather
Yeah,
than keeping to the virtuous intention from the beginning.
I
So
agree.
if you're
100%.
continuously praying for marriage and then putting the marriage on the idol, you're no longer praying for marriage. You're almost praying to marriage, and this.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I like that
exactly.
you mentioned that.
Hmm.
I know there might be a few listeners on here, and I think especially in the wake of a lot of like the feminist movements and things like
Hmm.
that, they're going to hear your desire for having a spouse and talking about it being like this most important thing, the thing that you care so deeply about, and they might be a little turned away by that. Do you have a response towards why this does matter so much to you and why it should matter
Yeah.
to the community?
Well, I grew up the classic oldest child overachiever.
Hmm.
And I grew up being viewing my life and the worth that I had through accomplishments. And when I was in high school, I did. I wanted to have this big bang corporate job. I wanted to eventually move up to CEO. Like that's what I would have told you like at the age of 18. And it wasn't rebellion or anything that made me change my priorities. It was the fact that as I fell in love with Jesus and fell in love with my faith, I realized that holiness is number one and then vocation is two. So I said, the thing I realized in college that I want the absolute most, second to being saved and having a relationship with God, was being a wife and mom. Second, number one, God, I want God to be number one. I want being an amazing wife to be two, and then being a great mother as three, and then everything else is four.
Hmm.
Well, I came to realize that because the way the church esteems marriage over the way the church esteems just normal day jobs. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with normal day jobs. Like we have to do them. We have to provide for our families. We have, especially in this economy, like give me a break, like I
Yeah.
totally understand. And I'm not saying that career doesn't matter. Like I want I mean I went the small business entrepreneurship route and I'm continuing to build it and I'm working hard at it. It's not unimportant. But when I fell in love with the Catholic faith and I learned about what the church teaches about vocations,
Hmm.
I and no matter how many discernment retreats I went on, I never felt called to religious life, not even a little
Okay.
bit.
I was going to
The
ask about
closer I
that.
got to
Yeah.
God, the closer I got to God, the less called I felt to religious life. When I went on a lot of silent retreats and discernment retreats in college, so I was like, well, if it's not religious life, and I do not have peace or certainty that being a consecrated single is my vocation, then it's definitely marriage. And as I've started this apostolate that is geared towards helping single Catholics meet each other, I I grew in that conviction even more that this is the vocation most people are called to, and it's the thing that is esteemed in the church. Like holy matrimony brings new life, and it brings new vocations. Like the children that come from those marriages
Yeah.
can be future priests or future parents. So in that nature, that's why I said what I said. It's not that career doesn't matter, and it's not at all. Also, it's when I'm saying that, I'm not. What I'm not saying is marriage is what makes you complete, or marriage is
Hmm.
what makes you worthy of anything good. Like I know that there's that extreme, like the idolization of it, but it's
Yeah.
also just like, oh, if I'm looking at my life in the long term, when I'm thinking about what kind of life, when I'm meeting Jesus face to face at my death, like, do I want to be able to look back on? I want
Yeah.
like my
Yeah.
marriage to be number one, second to loving God.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. And I just see it as such a big problem today where marriage is looked down upon. It's not
Hmm.
looked forward to. I think part of it is the fact that a lot of people are playing marriage before they get married. So they don't see
Exactly.
like the
Yeah.
difference between like the dating relationship and the married one. And
Hmm.
it comes with, honestly, it's harder territory. You know, at that
Hmm.
point, like there is no backing out. You have a lot more repercussions to your
Hmm.
actions. So I
Exactly.
think there's
There's a
um,
lot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's a problem that can be unpacked for a while, but
When I
I
interviewed
think
Rachel Hoover Conto, she emphasizes that the decline of marriage cannot be pointed to just one thing.
yeah,
It's a lot of obstacles in each phase of the process compounded on
yeah,
top of each other, and she addresses it in Pretty Good Catholic. So if you're one of those people that's like, why are marriages on a decline, I would recommend picking up that book. And that book is a huge credit to the convictions I hold today with the need for an apostolate around dating.
well, that's a great segue into more specifically
Hmm.
what I've been really looking forward to getting into is the
Hmm.
fact that you started this speed dating apostolate, right?
Hmm.
Okay, what is it? What's it called? What does it do?
Yeah.
Tell me all about it.
Yeah. So the initiative is called DFW Catholic Dating, and it helps support singles in Dallas Fort Worth that feel called to marriage, that are ready to jump in to the process of finding their person. It's accompanying them. And speed dating is it's you meet up, you spend like 90 minutes at an event, and you talk to 10 to 12 different people for 7 minutes each, and on your private match sheet you indicate yes or no, do I want to keep talking to this person after you talk to each person. The way I the way I've heard it put is it's a dating app in real life. So,
Good way of
but
putting it.
instead of an online profile where you decide swipe right or swipe left,
Hmm.
it's a 7 minute introductory conversation where you decide, do I want to continue this conversation or not? I don't frame it as you're saying no to someone. I frame it as, oh, you just decided that this conversation is not one you want to continue, but it's not a reflection on you if someone says no to you or if someone doesn't say yes to you. And then if both you and that other person said yes, then you match. And the next day, after all of my events, I sent an email to all the participants with their matches. And the first speed dating event has already had a marriage come out of it. They got married 2 Saturdays ago as we're recording this.
Very cool.
And yeah, and so it's that simple. Like I put a bunch of single Catholics that all want to date in the same room. I had a microphone and a bell and just ran an icebreaker each round, rang the bell when the 7 minutes was up, and then I had the ladies rotate. And the first couple of events were a little chaotic because I let them be so big. Like the first event,
Uh,
I just called up a local art gallery that you were allowed to host, rent out for events, and they were like, how many people are going to come? And I said, if I'm lucky, 20 people will come because I didn't I was like, I'm only gonna post about it in the local group me's, and I'm just gonna text people about it. Like I don't have an email list yet. I don't have I
yeah.
didn't have Instagram at all for those at all in 2024 because I still was like, I'm not using Instagram no matter what. But 72 people showed up, and
Wow.
they could not fit in that tiny art gallery. So most of the speed dating happened outside. So I had to hop back and forth from indoors, outdoors, and Yeah, the first two events have had one marriage and two impending marriages. They're engaged, but they're not getting
Wow.
married yet, not until 2026. But yeah, so they definitely had the effect of, oh, people are really craving this, and this is
Yeah.
something that's primarily done online, but everyone hates it. So why not, like, speed dating's a little intimidating, but
Yeah.
I was very blessed. I'm very blessed that it's helped some people find their spouse, and I had the pleasure of attending the first wedding that came out of speed dating, and definitely made me more excited to continue doing this because
That's beautiful. It's great to see the fruits of your labor too. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
and 72 people, that just demonstrates the need. So like
I know.
people are hungry for
Especially,
it.
especially since I told them if I'm lucky, 20 people will show up. So I didn't have a big enough venue, and I thought, oh, maybe that's just the first one. But the second one had 45 people show up. The third one had 40 people show up. And
That reminds me of the story of casting the net over the boat and
mhm,
expecting just like a few fish, but then like you
mhm,
just like there's just the abundance of fish that come. That's
exactly.
amazing. That's amazing.
Exactly. And they definitely, for the very short term, solved a major gap in Catholic dating. And it was a crazy time. I genuinely look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? I didn't know what all was going to have to go into the events. So I was just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I just booked a tiny venue and just told some friends. I thought it was going to be like a tiny hangout, but it ended up becoming a business venture.
So tell me a little bit about the business side, and we'll get back into
hmm
the dating world. But before we get too far off, I'm assuming you were receiving some messages from that end as well. I know personally, even in starting this, there's that messages like, "Am I prepared? Is this where God's calling me to?
Yeah.
Um, do I have the knowledge I need to have to do this?"
Yeah.
Um, you started this presumably when you were single, and I don't know if
Yes.
you still are or not, but
Very much. Yeah. Yeah. I was just frustrated with the dating space myself. So I had partly selfish motives for why I wanted to start speed dating at the time.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I've heard it all, like in my own head, right? Like,
Mhm.
are you really called to do this? Are you are you sure you of all people, like you're not married, Monica? Like, who's gonna listen to you? Like,
Yeah.
all those voices, I've heard them all. And a huge part of why I was able to stomp them out and be like these are all just the enemy trying to stop me from doing this is when I realized that every time I talked or prayed about this, I saw how big of a need it was. I noticed that of all people, I was the one that noticed the need at the degree I noticed it. If you notice a gap, like the person that's meant to fill a gap is the one that notices that there's a gap in the first place. How can you fill a gap that you don't notice is there? And I started noticing, like, why of all people would you notice this much of a gap to this extent if you weren't the one meant to fill it? And another
Right.
thing I used to combat all of that was to be able to make the impact that is badly needed, to be able to offer significantly more than just side, like monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly dating events, to be able to offer more than just that and not just have singles meet but also be accompanied, on top of, like, for me to build the reach to where people can find this on a Google search. Not just, they don't have to be plugged into the group me's yet, like they can be looking for community and they can find me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do this full time. When I realized that's what I'm gonna have to do, this full time and make a business from it, if I'm going to be able to have the capacity and the time and the energy and the finances to actually do this at the extent that I feel called to. So when I
Mhm.
noticed, yeah, I am called to this. I don't need
Yeah.
to doubt it. The more I lean into it, the closer I get to God, and the closer I get to strengthening the body of Christ. And then two, I doing it full time and transforming it into a business is the only real way to do it at the scale that is necessary. And then three, the other thing was like, yeah, like you said, when I started all of this, I was completely single, and I was like, you're not, God willing, you're not always gonna be. right? When you're married with kids, you're going to step back on this. You're going to step back and not be able to do this, but don't you want a lot of podcast episodes out there? Don't you want courses out there? Don't you want maybe being able to hire out some help so that this business can be run when you are a full-time mom, right?
Yeah.
So where people can still be helped by you without you having to touch it. When I
Yeah.
realized that too, I was like, no, it's my duty to build this now. And so when I was able to flip those scripts and realize, okay, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. That
Mhm.
was when I noticed I wasn't falling into those lies to the same degree as I used to. Because yeah, I did struggle with imposter syndrome. I was like, who's going to listen to me? But it's like,
Yeah.
actually, people are more willing to listen to you because their parents and their grandparents have zero clue what it's like out there. And you are very well versed on what it's like out there because you're out there. Like,
Yeah.
so when I realized that, and it's like, you're more equipped to actually diagnose the problem because you're experiencing the problem in your own life. So I could come
Yeah.
up with reasons why it made sense for me to do it that completely dismantled. So that's my advice to anybody who feels called to start a business or feels to start a ministry. I get really fired up about this. Feels called to start a podcast, feels called to start anything.
Yeah.
I learned this, in my coach training, what you focus on, you find. If you find reasons that it makes sense to do it and that you're called to do it and that you are, of all people, are the one meant to do this, you're going to find them and they're going to compound. But if you focus on all the lies, all you're going to hear are more lies, and then you're going to start to believe them as truths.
Yeah.
When you think about red cars, now you're going to notice all the red cars.
Yeah. Very true.
It's that same concept in our spiritual lives.
Absolutely. I reflect on like a lot of the healing miracles in the Bible, and
Mm-hmm.
Jesus almost the person in need of
Mm-hmm.
healing almost approaches Jesus before the healing actually takes place.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that faith that guided them,
Yeah.
and it's that faith that also with Christ saved them. And I reflect on that, and I go, if you're receiving a message and you've prayed on it,
Mm-hmm.
don't just continue to ruminate and pray on it. You pray on
Mm-hmm.
it, you've moved towards Christ, and then just get up and make your way towards Christ. When you
Exactly.
do that, he's going to lead you the way. He's going to heal you. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe you were off, but he's going to course direct. He's going
Yeah.
to
And
lead you up to where you're going.
I was a tad bit off because speed dating solved one gap in the very short term, which is helping people meet in person.
Yeah.
But like I told you, what I started observing was, okay, I'm matching them and then leaving them on there and then letting them just go in the wild and try to figure it out. But their singles need so much more than that. But guess what? I mean, at the age of 24, like, of course I'm not going to know what the long-term perfect solution is. I have to take action and observe the fruits or the drawbacks of each thing I do. And that's how you learn. Like, I wouldn't have even come up with the new initiative that I'm launching next month in the new year. I wouldn't have even figured that out if I never took action on speed dating.
Yeah. Yeah. No, if God's placing something in front of you, it's likely for a reason. I want to get into some of your new initiatives, but start off with speed dating.
Mm-hmm.
So about 7 to 10 minute interactions, and it's basically in-person online dating is how you describe it.
It's a dating app in real life, yes.
Dating app in real life. What's the problem with dating apps?
Well, many.
Okay.
The one that I harp on the most is the one that I personally have noticed in myself, and when I got over that hurdle, I couldn't stop talking about it, is specifically with women. I think we have this husband list in our head, and then we look at dating apps based on, does he meet that list? Yes or no, like you're shopping on Amazon. I
Yeah.
did that, and I will admit I did it because when I was on Catholic Match, I definitely immediately wrote off guys that weren't as tall as I wanted them to be. But like the person I'm dating right now is 5'3", and I remember I almost said no because of that, and I had to be like, Monica, what have you been preaching? What have you been preaching? What have you been preaching? That height doesn't matter, and that it doesn't matter for a first date. So take your own advice and say yes, right? I had to do that to myself because I noticed it. I talk about the problems with dating apps full time, and I almost fell into the trap. And
Yeah.
I don't think that dating apps are evil. I think they can be used in a good or bad way. And if you're going to use them, which I actually recommend, because they're an incredible tool that can connect you with someone that you otherwise wouldn't have met, which is what speed dating is, which is what a setup is, which is what matchmaking is. Every way you can meet someone is a way to connect with someone that you otherwise wouldn't have met had that way of meeting someone not existed. And that's how I see dating apps. I see them as very morally neutral, but you need to be equipped with how to negate the ways they can that they can fall short. And that's what I recommend. So here's the ways they can fall short. You can look at them as like, oh, this is my husband list, and I'm going to look at profiles based on whether or not this guy meets that, right?
Hmm.
No, that's not going to work because, first of all, half of the things on your husband list probably don't matter long term. They probably only matter in like when you're looking at a profile. But I can tell you right now, like at least 2/3 of my former husband list that I completely threw in the trash does not matter to me anymore. Um, Another fallback for men is I from what I've heard when I've talked to men about this is dating apps really can lower your confidence if you're not solidly rooted in your relationship with God because of the
Hmm.
lack of responses that guys get on dating apps. Just because of how a lot of women are wired and they're unaware of it and they're operating subconsciously without being aware of the way they're approaching it. They're not going to like you can send 200 messages and not get a message back,
Yeah.
right? That is a problem. That is a huge problem. And it's a and like you said, like the person you're gonna end up married to is gonna respond to you. So it's important to have that confidence of like God says who I am. None of these women on dating apps have any say in who I am as a son of God. And the person I'm gonna marry is gonna respond to me. If you can live like that and believe it, then I think that like you're good to use dating apps and not have your confidence hit by it. But if you're not well rooted, I think it can massively, massively impact that. The
Yeah.
third issue is it is very hard to gauge on online messaging whether you'll have chemistry with someone. And yes,
Hmm.
attraction and chemistry 100% matter. They're not the number one thing, but they do need to be there.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that online you're like maybe trying a little harder to impress. You can like wait a little longer to respond.
Yeah.
Um,
You go through
I
like 15 renditions of your text message before you send it.
exactly. You can't do that in a real time conversation, which is why I'm the kind of person that recommends um, skip the messaging. Just do you have enough in common with the person based on your profiles? Yes or no. Use the
Yeah.
messaging to get a video call going so that you can at least have like you don't have like yes, I understand it's a big investment to go on a first date and have zero clue if you're even going to enjoy the conversation. Like have like a 30-minute pre-date video call where you just do a vibe
Yeah.
check. Um and then go on a date, but I think it's very hard to get a sense of whether or not you're gonna like click with the person like personality wise, which is very important to know early on.
Yeah.
It's hard to gauge that over messages, and also because messaging doesn't happen in real time, it happens whenever like you can go 6 hours without receiving a response. The not knowing when you're going to get a response or if you're going to get a response causes a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
and it causes a lot of overthinking that is completely unnecessary, that completely drains the joy in the process, that in my opinion is why dating feels so hard.
Yeah. I
If
think people can relate to that even in like non-romantic relationships.
oh yeah.
I mean, this is our first time talking, and you texted me before we got on to the podcast, and I was in adoration. I low-key stayed in adoration longer than I thought because
Mhm.
I'm ashamed to admit I fell asleep in adoration. But
Yeah.
I got out of adoration. I was like, oh, I haven't responded in like way too long.
You have to develop a relationship with your phone where like you don't think twice about someone taking a while to respond. I didn't think twice about it because I've done the work to not care about how long it takes someone to
Yeah.
respond.
Um,
But you need to do that work if you're going to use dating apps. in a
Absolutely.
healthy
And I think that
way.
brings up a good point. It's like they don't have to be bad,
No.
but I think people need to realize how hard they can fall
Yeah.
and realize that they're fallible beings. And there's a few things I want to touch on. One is this gauge. A lot of people in this modern age think that the media and technology is a good way to build connection. And you mentioned that's hard to gauge. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are probably a little resentful of that idea of they're like, no, we grew up with technology, we can gauge it, I can get sarcasm through it. There's memes, there's emojis, all that. And I definitely used to like be that type of a person where I was
Hmm.
like, the media is a good way to connect, and to some degree, yes. But I'm a psych guy. I'm getting my master's in
Yeah.
psychotherapy. So there's some similarities between your mindset coaching and what I'm
Yeah.
training to be. But we do have an interpersonal gap, and that interpersonal gap occurs even face-to-face communication. So to think that that doesn't exist on technology is unwise.
Is insane. Yeah.
You also mentioned lower confidence, especially for men, and I think that's an important one to highlight because I think this goes back to like a lot of evolutionary psych,
Hmm.
where if you go back to like where we used to be in small cohorts of people, we lived in
Hmm.
towns and villages, your options were limited.
Yeah.
And to a degree, you only had a few choices. And that forced a few things. One, it forced your hand to be more accepting of the individual and meeting them where they're at. And it also forced the
Yeah.
other individual to be a better person because they realized that if not, they're going to end up lonely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
Exactly.
forced the hand for both individuals.
Hmm.
But we were not designed to go through 400 people a day and get
Nope.
rejected 400 times.
Nope. We were
And
not.
especially in dating hierarchies, a lot of the psych literature points to women dating up in like the social hierarchy. And honestly, not just up from where they are at, but up to
Mhm.
the highest that they can achieve.
Yeah.
So when you're now in a village of an online village where there's millions of people, you're not going to be the top dog. It's not hard to be the strongest person in the village or the smartest person in the village or the village doctor. But then when you're on social media, there's 1,000 people that are better than you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
And
it's almost as
even
if nothing's ever enough. And I
and
think that's
even though
probably
the
part of the problem.
Catholic dating pool is so narrow compared to the secular dating pool, that still exists because of the online function. But yeah, continue.
Which leads to the husband list because it is important. Like you want
Yeah.
the qualities and things like that, but the husband list. And I'm not trying to sit back and go, you should not care
Oh no, I'm not
if they
saying that
have
either.
if they have these things. And I know that's what you were trying to say.
Yeah.
But as Catholics especially,
Very
I
short
think
list.
the thing that we should focus on most, the one non-negotiable, is their faith and their
Yes.
relationship with Christ. Your husband or wife list, that should be the big one on the front, and then the rest of them were maybe like here and there.
Yeah.
Do they want kids? Are they Catholic? Or like those are the big ones.
Are they Catholic and are they Catholic in every way? Like, do they accept all church teaching? You've already found a diamond in the rough if you found that, and you click
That's
personality
true.
wise.
I've met a lot of Christians in general of all denominations that are, for all intents and purposes, very into their faith, but they deny very crucial teaching of
Yeah.
chastity and sexual
Hmm.
teachings primarily is the where they fall short.
Yeah.
I also find the idea too with these apps that sometimes they breed the very problem in the individual that keeps them from going out and meeting the people. So oftentimes we make excuses of why we don't have time to go out or we don't have time to meet people face to face. And what that typically leads to is people that are uncomfortable with face to face communication.
Yep.
And then the conversation breeds in the chat, but then it never leaves it.
Yep.
And I've seen that so much, even just in interpersonal relationships of just like talking to people. Our generation's ability to talk to people has become severely hindered.
Very pathetic. Yes.
Yeah.
As
So
Matt Fradd would say, pathetic. Very pathetic.
you would say it with a little bit of an accent, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not going to imitate his accents.
I was hoping for it. That would be a good clip. That'd be a good clip. How does speed dating combat this? It's still quick.
Yeah.
You're still seeing a lot of people. If you go through it, perhaps you could catastrophize more of like, I did this in person and I still didn't find anybody.
Yeah.
How does the speed dating fix this?
Yeah. So that's a good question. And I thought it was going to fix everything, but there were some of that it fixed slightly, but not for the long term. But one thing I've noticed with speed dating is I went out of my way before the event started to encourage, hey, you are not ruling people out right now. You are ruling people in. If you focus on reasons to rule people in, you will find them. Look for a reason to rule someone in every time you talk to them. The only reason you should not mark yes, notice I said not mark yes instead of mark no. The only reason you ought to not mark yes after 7 minutes is if you absolutely could not talk all 7 minutes. If the conversation was just not there, which happens, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? Not everyone's going to be your person. And if there was absolutely no chance of continuing the conversation, that's when you don't mark yes. So default to yes, and speed date with a mindset of, I'm going to look for reasons to rule them in, and then on the notes of your match sheet that you take a picture of before you turn the match sheet in, write down why you ruled them in. Because if we start dating with that, you don't need to worry about ruling people out. That'll happen organically.
Yeah.
That'll happen organically. You're only going to marry one person. Everyone else is going to get ruled out. But the one person you marry is going to be the one person that you never stopped ruling in. That can also help with that can also help with rejection, because I think we see when someone doesn't rule us in as rejection, but it's like, no, only one person is going to forever rule us in. It actually, mathematically and statistically, if I speed date, I mean, most people you meet are not going to be your spouse, and only one person will be your spouse. So if you have that mindset of, like, I'm just talking to people and looking for reasons to rule them in, and I have the confidence that they're also looking for reasons to rule me in, because I'm worthy of being ruled in by someone, right?
Yeah.
That's the mindset I encourage with speed dating. And I recognize, like, not every speed dating event is going to go out of their way to have that caveat. Another thing I noticed, though, is things like I mentioned height, because that's the one that's the most personal to me. That's why I'm such a fan of, like, if women go on dating apps, to be like, block the height feature, like, just like cover it up, because I used the Catholic Match website since I didn't have a smartphone. So, like, on CatholicMatch.com, I would use my finger and, like, cover the height feature, because I'm like, if I want, I would tell women to do that, because I'm like, but things like speed dating, you're not, like, you don't see the numerical value in front of you. Like, you don't see the numerical value of where they stand on politics, or the numerical value, or, like, not the numeric, but the words. Like, you don't see the words and the numbers. You see a person in front of you. And even the fact that, like, yeah, this is awkward. We're all doing this together. This is uncomfortable. But the people that are refusing to get off their screens and refusing to meet people in person aren't going to show up to speed dating. So there's, like, this, like, greater sense of respect and admiration that I've noticed from speed dating than I have from, which I can't observe people through dating apps because that's weird. But, like,
But it almost makes sense naturally that, like,
yeah,
although it be awkward, you're ruling out a much more awkward form of communication, which is very impersonal online communication.
And before you even have each other's numbers, you've already had an in-person conversation. So the text is a continuation of an in-person conversation, not the start of an awkward conversation that's never coming offline.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems much more natural to me. And it's not unknown that you're attracted to the person, and perhaps physical features and things like that too, but at least you have something else to talk about. That it's not like, hey, I saw your picture on a dating app.
Pictures and what they said. That's the other thing too, is, like, dating app profiles are what people say about themselves. And I learned this from Pretty Good Catholic. What people say about themselves is not always accurate. Even if they're not a liar, I could say, you could ask me, Tyler, what do you like to do for fun? And I would tell you, I like to do puzzles, which is true. I love puzzles. I'm a puzzle addict. However, if you actually spent time with me, you would realize that as much as I say I love puzzles, sometimes I go months without making time to do them.
Yeah,
Like, just a basic, like, thing like that that has no ill will, that's not a lie. What people, like, say about themselves versus how they transpire when you spend time with them is not the same thing. So that's why I
absolutely.
think it's very damaging to, rule someone out because they don't share your hobbies. Well, maybe if you spent time with them, they'd be happy to do your hobbies with you.
Absolutely. And if we look at a lot of social psychology literature, the best judge of character is very infrequently yourself. It's oftentimes what the literature points to is the best judge of character is a friend that's like a third party to both of the individuals in the relationship, or just a friend in general. Like typically, your friends have a really good insight into who you are. They
Exactly.
see
They
the
could more
best and the worst
honestly
of you.
say what I do in my free time.
And
What do
and
you
that leads to my point with you talked about earlier investment. It's like a big investment to go out and talk to people and things like that. But I think we often put too much weight on it of like because it has to work out. And the idea is make the investment to first become friends. Like
Mhm.
make the investment to have a good conversation, to meet somebody new that you share faith with, to find commonality and to be curious about that individual.
Yeah.
And then that's a really good starting point.
Mhm.
And it starts off kind of what you were talking about earlier of the now you're not trying to rule somebody out. I think so often we get into conversations and we're like, okay, what do I not like about this person? But if you jump into it and be like, okay, what can I find about this person that I like? It might not end up that you date that person, but at least you had a good conversation. And
Yeah, and you
that's a
actually
good
enjoyed
investment.
the conversation and you weren't doing this like half paying attention because the other that's why I also say ditch the husband list, ditch the wife list, like because I've noticed in myself, because I had to do this, when I ditched the husband list, I wasn't like on first dates or at functions like young adult groups or speed dating and like doing the mental calculation in my head of does he check this box? Does he check that box? Does he check this box? Instead, I'm like, oh, what do I like? And if there's nothing to like, that doesn't reflect ill on him, but I can communicate honestly and say, hey, I don't think we're a good fit. And that's all you have to say. It's not personal. You're going to have to say that to everybody but one person.
And I like the idea too of that not seeing their stats. I never thought about this, but I'm sure you've experienced this where you're talking to somebody and the more you like that person, the more their flaws just kind of seem to disappear a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like when you're having a good conversation with the dude in front of you that's not as tall as you want, they almost don't appear as short anymore because
No,
you care about
it's
the
literally
individual.
like I tell the story all the time because it's something that I'm like I want other people to experience the breakthrough. Like had I had this husbandless default to no mindset, I wouldn't be dating who I'm dating now, which would suck. But
Hmm.
like I tell people all the time, like the moment I first saw him in person, I forgot about his height completely. I genuinely didn't even think about it, and I forget about it all the time too. Like the only time I think about it is when I share my conviction to help other people not fall into the same traps that I used to fall into. And like I grew up around tall, like my dad's 6 feet, my brother's 6'2", my uncle's 6'6". So I think I thought I was generous and or I thought like, oh, I 6 feet is normal. So I'm being generous by saying 5'10 is my minimum. Like I'm just telling you, like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to pretend like I never fell into that. But the funny thing is when I met people in real life, I didn't think about the 5'10" thing. I only thought about it when I was on Catholic Match. I only thought about it when I was on Catholic Match and the number was there. But
Yeah.
I heard what I would say to a friend who had my attitude on Catholic Match, which is why I coached myself into being like, if this is anybody else, would you tell them to not care about height? Yes. Okay, well then take your own advice. So
Mm.
I share that story like to be like there's probably a million other things that you think like oh he has to like these hobbies or he has to be an introvert and extrovert. That was another one. Like I thought I wanted someone who was so extroverted that I looked shy, but I've tried that. I've been in relationships with guys like that, and shocker, we weren't compatible. Shocker, but I've learned by not defaulting to no with someone who was more melancholic. Um, like the person I'm dating right now, he's a lot more reserved and we're very compatible actually. Like I was shocked at that, but I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't given it a shot. And that's the other thing is if you look at dating as like a lot of Catholics look at dating as my only purpose in doing this and spending time doing this is a spouse. Well, then you can start to get you can have an objectifying mindset towards the people that you don't end up marrying. Like, oh, that relationship was a waste of time because it didn't meet my desire for a spouse, or
Yeah.
you didn't meet that role in my life, so therefore you wasted my time. But I learned what doesn't work or what isn't compatible with me by dating as much as I'm learning what is compatible with me. So I
Absolutely.
think having the mindset of, yes, dating is ultimately for marriage, but there's more fruits that come from dating than just marriage. Like,
Mhm.
there's fruits that can come from really awkward dates, actually. There's like fruits that can come from not being treated well and like learning how to advocate for yourself better. Like I'm not saying purposely like let's try not to get treated well, but like I'm saying like the things that happen that like make us so discouraged. And I've noticed like if you walk around with your head down, just full of discouragement because of this date that went nowhere, and then this guy that you thought you liked and thought was going to ask you out, but then you saw him with someone else and now you are down, or you're asking out 10 women and they all said no, like all the things we can look at as that's a waste of time, that's not working because we're only thinking about marriage. But if we think about all of the fruits that can come in our lives because we're dating, it actually makes us more likely to continue to date and to continue to try, which is actually going to
Yeah.
help us get married. So
Yeah.
I've noticed like that's one major mindset that I'm trying to advocate for is we've heard the date for marriage talks, but I think
Mhm.
one negative fruit of taking that advice too far is people aren't seeing the other benefits. And I'm not saying casually date, but there's a lot of benefits to dating that just help you as a human, that
Yeah.
aren't marriage, that just are a side effect of dating.
Mhm. I always say, like, dating for the intent of marriage, or have the purpose of marriage, like, be why you're dating. And I do see, like, why a lot of people are taken aback by it because it can be taken to the extreme.
Yes.
So then I like to clarify, date with the intent of marriage, but you don't have to connect with the intent of dating or connect with the intent of marriage. You can connect with people and simply just have a connection. And we're missing so much of that now.
Yeah. The way I say it, as someone who's Catholic who believes, Catholicism is, what is the truth, and what I'm striving for is, are you called to marriage, yes or no? If you're not called to marriage, then you're just not dating. So if you're a Catholic who believes all the teachings of the church and believes your vocation is marriage, well, then that you're dating. And if you're not that, you're not dating. So you're dating because you're called to marriage.
Hmm.
But in the short term, we can get really discouraged and we can retreat and stop taking action and become that parked car because God can't move the parked car if we're only thinking this is only worthwhile if I find a spouse. You're not going to be
Hmm.
dating if you're called to religious life. So by default, you're dating to marry, but that mindset, like what are the actions and inactions and fruits in your life, and that's where mindset coaching comes in, is like the way you think impacts the way you feel, which impacts your actions, and then your actions is what God works with.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought up an interesting point, and then I want to get into your new initiatives to address
Okay.
the other problems. But you mentioned dating if you're called to marriage. What are your thoughts on those who are still discerning between the two?
Yeah, I think that it can get really messy if you are still thinking about the priesthood or the religious life, and it can cause insecurity in the other person if you're communicating
Mm.
with them, hey, I'm not sure I might be called the priest, and it's like, well, I think you're doing the people you're dating and yourself a disservice if you're mentally flopping back and forth. And I also think a lot of Catholics can be very guilty of using priesthood and religious life as their rebound. Like they just got broken up with and they're heartbroken, and they
Oh
think
yeah. Yeah.
they think this person is like the best they'll ever get. And because there's no better than this person other than God, I guess I'm called to God. So I guess I'm called to the priesthood. I've done that. I've done that. Like
Yeah.
I've gotten broken up with, and I've been like, well, I don't think there's anyone better than that person because I mean, I haven't met the right person yet, obviously, so I don't know what's better if I haven't met, like, but I don't mean better, like, objectively. I mean like better for me, right? Like better
Mhm.
for me. That's what I mean. Um, someone that's a better fit for me. Of course, I don't know if that's true because I haven't met that yet. But I've gone to to go on discernment retreats as my response. Be like, I guess I'm stuck here because this didn't work. And I think that's a very. I don't think that's like. Let's just do a pulse check and be like, is that the right attitude we want to have towards God? Like, I
Yeah, he's like your second option.
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
treating dating like the second option is also very uncharitable to the people you date because, oh, the seminary rejected me, so I guess I'll date. Like, how do you think? Like, I think if you're struggling with going back and forth, that is something that ought to be worked on beforehand because I also think that, oh, I might be called to the religious life is like the inescapable route from a relationship that can't be argued with. It's like the cover up reason a lot of people like cover up their different commitment issues. And that, like I said, that you're the one studying psychology. So if I'm off, tell me. But I think like just my observation of I do think a lot of people use that because I've heard plenty of I through friends and through just observation, I've seen a lot of men be like, I should try seminary. That's why I'm breaking up with you. Like, I don't feel called to to marriage. But then they end up marrying someone else shortly after. It's like, well, you felt called to marriage when you were with someone else, but that girl can feel very betrayed. Like,
Yeah.
it, and or like women can do the same thing. I'm not saying, but I think that needs to be like, I always tried to date from a stable, certain place of like, I'm dating because I'm called to marriage, not to see whether or not I'm called to marriage, but always with the confidence that if you're wrong, I say wrong in air quotes for those watching the video because we have a free will choice. Like God gives us the choice. Like I think we forget that we have the free will choice. And as
Yeah.
long as it's, if you watch Father Mike Schmitz's Four Doors of Discernment, as long as it's good, prudent, possible, and desirable, God will bless that decision you make. And God loves us so much that he gave us the choice. We're not predestined. We don't believe in predestination. Um, but if
Not to the type that like Calvinists do. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So we don't believe in that. God will always guide us if we stay close to him. And if we're meant to be in a religious life, and if that is what will make us happiest and holiest, God is going to reroute us without us having to. It's not like a puzzle that we have to solve. And I think that's another reason I recommend picking a pretty good Catholic. She addresses sudden vocational discernment syndrome, which is what she calls it, very thoroughly in Pretty Good Catholic because it is a massive hurdle that Catholics uniquely face. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very opinionated on it because of what I've
I
observed in friends and the heartbreak that it causes.
I definitely think you mentioned some traps that you can get into. The only thing I would add and perhaps caution is falling into the trap that people were telling you when you first started of like needing to fully know. And
Yeah.
you touched on that briefly afterwards of like still allowing God's voice to like penetrate your heart if you did go off course of what he's calling you to do.
Yeah.
And I mean that's one thing I think that people should never say no to that like either of the vocations until you say like the vows of either one of them
Yeah, like
because
your
there's always
yes
that
of one is your
possibility.
no, your forsaking of all others. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think it's important for people to be open to those. And I don't think they
Yeah.
need to like fully know. I think you can be in that discernment process, but that's a very careful territory that you need to walk. And you also need to be respectful to the other person, like letting them know
Yeah.
and you understanding how that might feel to them as well.
Yeah, I heard
Um,
it. Yeah, I've heard it said like you're only discerning marriage with that person when you're dating. So discerning, yeah, so it's like, yeah, you can always take steps and if you're not called to marry that person, then you can go back to square one and rediscern like it all works. Um
mhm.
but I think the way we communicate that can wound. Which is
Yeah.
why I'm such a fan of like you're temporarily saying you're not discerning religious life when you get in a dating relationship and you're temporarily not entering a dating relationship when you're discerning religious life, so if we have like double discerning is what I'm against. I'm not saying you have to know that you're called a religious life before or know that you're called to marriage before dating. But yeah, like, yeah, if I could correct myself, if I misled, like double discerning is what I'm saying. No, like do not double discern.
Yeah. That's an interesting point that I haven't thought about before. I'll have to chew on it a little bit more.
Hmm.
But it makes sense. I'm sure I could argue against it, but arguing for it
Hmm.
as well. The example I'm getting is kind of when you're like trying a new stimulus or you're trying a new medication to see if something works.
Hmm.
You don't want to like try a bunch of medications because then if you make progress, you don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So if you're discerning both, and then you're like, oh wow, I'm getting closer to Jesus, which is the goal of either vocation. It's like, okay, where
Yeah.
am I getting closer to from? Is it because I'm discerning religious life, or is it because of the relationship I'm in?
Exactly.
So that makes sense. You have new initiatives coming out. So you
Hmm.
mentioned a lot of the benefits of speed dating. I find that those are pretty practical reasons to go speed dating. I've never been to one of the events. Maybe
Hmm.
I'll have to check it out. I've never done the online stuff either. Um,
I've done it all,
but
so that's why I started something new.
and you did, and it seems great.
Yeah.
But you're telling me that there's still some more that needs to be done,
Hmm.
and that you're on the path to doing that. What
Yeah.
does that look like?
So I'm not saying I'm never running a speed dating event again. I'm going to run them less frequently because I find that when I run them too close together, the same people keep showing up, which defeats the purpose of meeting new
No,
people.
yeah,
But, every 6 months to a year, like people that were previously discerning the priesthood are now dating, or people that were previously paired off have left those relationships, and like people that were previously speed dating are now paired off. So like the crowd changes. So that's more what I'm targeting with speed dating is spreading them out enough to where every time you go to one, if you go to them, which I hope you're not going to them every 6 months because I hope you're finding your person, but if they're effective, meaning you don't need to come back. So if you're going to them, you are going to be meeting new people. But when it comes to when I read the feedback, is yes, they are better than dating apps, I think. Um, but with speed dating, a lot of mainly women were telling me like they felt, and they because I welcomed all feedback and I let the feedback be anonymous. I welcomed all the feedback because I'm like I want to serve you guys. Like I want to create what you guys need. And a lot of women were telling me like they're more and more turned off by speed dating because of how high pressure the rounds feel. Due to the
okay,
fact that it's 7 minutes. Like 7 minutes is nothing. Like 7 minutes is not enough time to develop a connection. And yes, you can, which I advocate for. If you are strangers from date number one, I do recommend going slower before exclusivity. I do recommend that on a practical human level. However, single-handedly changing the way people date is not a task I feel called to do because that is a lot of effort for very low fruit, and it's not my job to control. It's my job to influence, right? So a lot of women were telling me like we really really want to be friends with someone first, and 7 minutes is not enough time to build a friendship. So, and as much as I can advocate for not having that mindset,
hmm,
how about I just work with the defaults that are out there
yeah,
and
meet
work
them
with
where
it
they're at.
rather than trying to change it? So what I'm starting in the new year is something called Catholic Singles Meetup Groups. So it's going to be like a meetup group where you meet once a week. I'm going to start out. I'm going to start out on the shorter end, 4 weeks. Maybe I can do them for longer if that's what the demand is. But it's like, okay, this week on Tuesday night, we're going to play pickleball. This week on Tuesday night, we're going to Adoration. This week on Tuesday night, we're going to an arcade. This week on Tuesday night, we're going to this bar. Like, it's basically
Yeah,
going to be like 10 women, 10 men are in the same group. You see the same people every week for a very short amount of time. And instead of structurally telling them, talk to this person and then rotate, I'm just letting people mingle and jive and build friendships, and then they can match at the end of the short-term meetup group. And
now, are you going to keep it to where there's still a document where they match
yep,
anonymously, or yes?
well, they can. I'm gonna. I also been getting feedback from men saying they feel a lot more empowered and they feel a lot more proud of themselves when they take the risk of asking a woman out, not knowing if she's going to say yes. But if
Good
they
for
get a
them. Yeah.
match, like, she's going to say yes if she wrote you down, right?
Mhm.
So I've been that feedback, and I'm like, wow, that's as a woman, like, who does not know what it's like to be a man, like, that's very fascinating feedback to me. So I'm actually going to be like, you know what? I want to let the men that prefer to do that just ask for numbers at the end. I am going to, you know, say, hey, this is how this works. Like, these are the terms you agree to be part of this. This is not a young adult group, so this is a completely independent, separate thing. So, because
Yeah.
this is what the women want, I'm going to ask the gentleman to hold off. But here's the thing: I think they're going to want to hold off because I don't think they want to ask a woman out on week 1 and then have to see her for 3 more weeks. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so they can ask out themselves. But if that's not the route they go, they have the option of submitting their yeses and then getting matches at the end.
Okay.
And they can either opt out of the matching system, or they can opt in and match. So the people that prefer that can do it. The people that don't prefer that can do it. The guys that
Okay.
feel like I'm going to be a lot more invested and a lot more driven to pursue if I just do the asking out on my terms. Like, I want to give the men the freedom to do that, and I don't want to emasculate them. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking. It's like, not forced conversation. I'm not going to have all these icebreakers. I'm just going to throw Catholics in a group together, and we're not going to go to a Bible study. You're not going to be forced to mingle. You're just going to have fun. And like, you're just going to
Yeah.
see while you're having fun, who are you drawn to? And it will filter out for and I'm going to have like an extensive sign up form where I vet your intentions. I make sure everyone is here for the same intentions. Everyone here is not in a relationship. Everyone here is not recently out of a relationship. Everybody here knows they're called to marriage, or is, if they don't 100% know, like we said, they're very confident that they're called to marriage. And
Willing to
everyone here is dating for the
temporarily.
same reason. They're
Yeah.
not just here to make friends. They're looking for a relationship.
Yeah.
But the purpose of the short term is to build friendships, and then from there, everyone knows what their intentions are. And everyone that shows up is single and Catholic and ready to mingle. And then so you don't have to ask yourself, like, is she single? Should I ask her out? Should I ask her if she's single? You can just have fun for 4 weeks and then ask someone out.
Yeah. I like that. It's will definitely probably increase some of the level of the awkwardness, but I think in a good way. Like, the amount of awkwardness that should be there and that you should overcome in order to go ask somebody out.
Yeah. And if you don't want to face the awkward, then you'll be vetted before you even come. But that's the goal, actually. Like, this isn't meant for everyone. This is meant for
Yeah.
a very specific type of single that's ready to take action and take the risk. And also, I hear from young adults all the time, like, I'm in a busy job. I am not the type of person to want to go out. I'm the type of person to want to sit at home and read, or I'm the person that doesn't want to go to all the young adult events.
Yeah.
Someone who's like, oh, I know my time is going to be well spent for the reason I'm going out.
Yeah.
I want to create something that will not, because I don't know about y'all, but when I, was like completely unattached and single, I did that mental calculation of how likely is it that someone new that I'm interested in will be at that event, because I don't want to go to all the things, but by staying
Yeah.
home, I feel like I'm not taking enough action. And like, do I go to
Absolutely.
ICP? Do I go to the Faith Fitness? Do I go to this Bible study? Do I go to this? I don't want to go to the things just to meet a spouse. I want to go to the things because I'm interested in the activity. Or I don't just want to go to Catholic things. I also want to take tap dancing classes and go to the gym. And like, I hate those mental calculations. I want to be like, if I just want to do something once a week and know I'm doing something, and know I'm doing something that is the most likely to be successful, that's what I'm trying to create for you.
Absolutely. I think you're reading the minds of many young adult listeners, and perhaps even, I'll admit, mine at many points in my life where
Okay, I
there's a lot
only
of
can read the
calculations that
mind
go
because I have the same mind.
into
Which is
no,
why,
but
like, I was able to, like, I'm like, yeah, I am qualified to do this, even though I'm not married right now. Like, I am qualified to do this because I know what this is like more than someone who has been married for 5 years, you know?
yeah, yeah, that's awesome, and it helps knowing that they're single. I find it so oftentimes just like, do you approach that person because there's no way that they're single?
Yeah, that's why dating apps signups are appealing is because everyone on Catholic Match, you're not asking yourself, do I message them or not? Like, what if they're not single? You're not asking that on Catholic Match. I want to create like that, like remove that obstacle, but you
Hmm.
still have to show up and be yourself and connect with people. Like that obstacle, I can't take that away. And I shouldn't take that away because that's character building. And like I said, yes, you might not meet your spouse through these groups, but they're character building. Like
Yeah.
learning
Yeah.
how to meet new people and ask good questions and connect and have fun with people that you don't know yet. That is a skill you're going to need when you meet your future spouse, whether you meet your
Absolutely.
future spouse next month or 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So practicing is a very good reason to date.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those, again, I've said it before, say it again. God will use those things for his
Yep.
good. So you're doing that initiative. Is there, and we're going to link that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
But is there something else you're adding to it, or is that the main thing?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier in this episode, I recognize that just getting singles in the same room and matching them and then being like, okay, you're on your own, is not something I'm satisfied with doing because I recognize that I personally I have read way too many books, listened to way too many podcasts, have had to cherry pick what helps me, what doesn't help me, and some advice, like there's so much advice out there that's conflicting, but
Yeah.
you have to have the self-knowledge and learn how to know yourself and have be able to know what's advice we're taking, what's not. You have to factor in your background, your history, your wounds, like everything that's uniquely yours. Also, is a factor in like what advice you take, what advice you don't take. How you met the person is also a factor in what advice you take, what advice you don't take. Like a lot of singles are left on their own to figure this out because of the collapse of having friends and family involved in the process. So that is that is a gap that as a whole, I want to do my best to fill. So I'm going to be offering, they're not published yet, but I'm going to be offering different online courses, different ebooks, different coaching memberships where you can, offering dating profile audits because even making a dating profile, a lot of people don't know how to do that. And that's another thing that's very personalized. And that's something I said in my talk about a month ago or about 3 weeks ago is like online advice. This goes back to the smartphone, inundation. Like having access to all this information is not helpful because a blog, a podcast, a book is not like is made for the masses. It's not made for you specifically. But working with me and having me be a second set of eyes for you is as I get to know you and as I get to know what you need, I can offer, personalized protocols and personalized like, oh, this section of this resource would be very good for you. And I can be a referral machine to help Catholics not feel like they're the only person that cares about this aspect of their life. And yeah, and I want to
I mean, I
offer a
totally
community
agree.
where people can set each other up. Like, what if you meet someone in the meetup group where you're like, wow, great like not great person, probably not my fit, but I have a friend that would be a great match. Like, I want to
Oh,
offer
yeah.
ways that people can learn how to, be more have more people involved in this because I think doing it alone is a huge reason why so many people are falling on their faces doing this.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd have to agree too. It's like you mentioned the conflicting information out there, and I mean, this is a big thing in psychology right now. Is we're in a replication crisis
Yep.
where a lot of the studies that happened aren't being replicated again and can't be, and we're finding conflicting results. And I'm going into a field that basically says exactly what you just said right there. Is you can read all the self-help books you want, and they're good for the masses, and they're good, and they might give you good insight, but you actually need to go do the work.
Yeah, and you have to know
And
how
having
you uniquely should implement it.
you uniquely should implement it. And I'm trained to be a professional in that, so I can help people along that way. And then I know you also have your certified Catholic coaching, and
Hmm.
so you're trained to do that,
Yeah.
and certified to do that through a Catholic coaching context, and be that second set of eyes. So that's awesome. So courses, you're offering courses and some coaching, and then being
Courses,
a second set of eyes.
ebooks, and both group coaching and the premium is the one-on-one coaching. And I
Very
also am
cool.
offering dating profile audits if you don't want to have a whole coaching on like a long-term coaching on your dating life, then like even just if you just want someone to help you make your profile, like that's something that's like that takes less than 30 minutes. It's my lowest ticket personal one-on-one service.
Yeah,
But yeah, and
that's
towards
great.
the end of 2026, I want to start publishing some books that can help people learn how to know themselves and
Yeah,
learn how to know what to take and leave. Because that is something I learned the hard way.
absolutely. I'm a fan of a lot of the existential approaches to therapy, and you're kind of hitting a lot of those like core ideas of knowing yourself, knowing your meaning, knowing your why,
Hmm.
and you also mentioned, and this is a big thing in therapy as well, is like family is a great thing, but it's also a thing that influences you. And you
Hmm.
kind of mentioned a lot of those messages coming from the family, and I love my family dearly,
Hmm.
but all the great things and all the bad things about you as an individual, and I say good and bad loosely because
Yeah.
not necessarily like virtuous, but
Yeah.
the things you want to change and the things that are good that you don't want to change. Those were manifested in a lot of ways from your family,
Hmm.
and they're going to be continued to be reinforced through your
Yep.
family. And with the best of intentions, a lot of times you're receiving messages that kind of keep you stuck in the same track. So
Yep. And our
that's an
friend groups can
awesome.
keep us stuck. Like
Absolutely.
I look back and I'm like, yeah, I definitely think that like when a lot of single women gather together and we just commiserate about how much guys suck or about how much dating sucks or how much being single sucks, then we end up only thinking about that. And then if all you're thinking about is how much everybody sucks, then everyone you're meeting, you're going to find the bad in everyone you meet, and you get stuck single. And then it's like misery loves company. But then if one person gets into a relationship, they don't really fit into the friend group anymore. Like
Yeah.
and that's a whole podcast. It's a whole topic that I plan on doing an entire podcast about. Like, are your friend groups keeping you single? Because I really do think that it's something I've
Yeah.
never heard talked about.
No, I agree. And to clarify too, I think it's also how we use our family and our friends. It's not
Yeah,
always our family and friends, but how we use it. I know so often there's like, and those listening, you could probably reflect on who it is. There's always like one person we go to for one thing and another person we
yeah,
go to for another, just because we know it's going to confirm what we already know is true
yeah.
or what we
Confirmation
already believe.
bias.
So
That's another
having an
reason to
objective,
hire a dating coach because they're not going to give you confirmation bias. I'm not going to give anybody confirmation bias that comes to work with me. And that's actually why it's worth hiring.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to know a little bit about your media usage and how
Yeah.
you just completely.
Yeah.
But I envy that, but I don't know if I have the guts to do exactly what you did.
Yeah.
But I've heard you talk about it on another podcast, and it almost seemed like a dream. I was like, that sounds so nice.
Yeah. Well, it is nice. It is a challenge to be an entrepreneur with that way of being, but when it comes to media usage, I ask myself, does this add value to my life? Does it add value to my relationship with God? Does it add value to the church? If
Mhm.
the answer is no on all three things, I don't have it. It's that simple. Like when it comes to things like Instagram, well, having a personal Instagram, when I had it, before I deleted it, I started noticing it rots my brain. It makes me envy other people. I I almost used it as a what's the word? I used it as a cop out of having a real prayer life because I told myself I follow all these Catholic accounts, like I'm getting my spiritual nourishment. Catholic Instagram is not your spiritual nourishment. It's not the same as actually praying. Catholic podcasts are not your spiritual nourishment. They're great, but they should be a substitute, not substitute. Should be an addition, not a substitute to an
Yeah,
actual real prayer life. So I started
absolutely.
noticing I was telling myself these stories that weren't true, that I am a good Catholic and I'm connected to God because I follow all these godly Instagram accounts and all these godly podcasts. But I started noticing that no, if I'm not praying, then all that is like rocky soil, right? It's like all of that content is going to fall on rocky soil if I'm not nurturing my own life. So I was like, at all costs, I don't want any reason not to pray. I don't want any reason not to learn how to think with my own thoughts and be in the true presence of the present moment. So for a season, I was like, okay, for Lent, I'm going to give up. I read that Emily Wilson Instagram post. I was like, I'm not going to be on social media. I'm not going to listen to music. Yeah, like Christian music and even Gregorian chant, great things, but they're not a replacement for a prayer life. So I completely cold turkey deleted everything. And I thought it was just going to be for Lent. And then Lent was over and I was like, I don't want a smartphone. So I got rid of my smartphone. And at the time I was working my 9 to 5 corporate job and I didn't need it for work. So I was like, yes. So I got rid of it. I stopped. I even caught myself being like, but I need a smartphone for GPS. And then I was like, well, what if you just learn to not need a GPS? How about instead of making an excuse to continue in your old ways, you find loopholes to live the way you want to live? So
Yeah.
I did the extreme thing of print out Google Maps, which every time I tell people that, it sounds ridiculous, but I'm like, that was how willing I was to cut off the thing that I was using as a cop-out for not praying. And I started praying every single day like never before, because what else was I going to do? I'm sitting in a doctor's office and I don't have my phone to scroll on, and then no one's texted me because I don't text that many people very often, because text is purely a medium to initiate in-person meetups. That's all I use it for. Or to initiate meetings like, our podcast recording. It's not meant to fill my time, and it's not meant to foster relationships. So phone calls are, but not text. But I would start being like, oh, who have I not talked to in a while? Oh, I haven't talked to so-and-so. I'll call her. And if they don't answer, I'm like, not everyone's, I hope people aren't always on their phones. So I'm actually happy when people don't answer the phone all the time. And I'm like, I'll just, either if I don't have a book, then I will just sit there and say some Hail Marys. And I started noticing in the car, I don't like the radio. I don't like the ads. The radio, I don't always get to listen to the song I want. So I'm just going to stop listening to music for a season in the car. And I started noticing all the rosaries I could pray in the car and all the contemplation of what I believe I can do in the car. And I started noticing too that beyond the spiritual life, all the things that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be a puzzle girl. I've always wanted to be a bookworm. I've always wanted to be that person that lives such a happy life that she doesn't need to check up on other people's lives to fill her time. I've always wanted to be that girl. I didn't become her until I got rid of my smartphone, and I went from reading one book every 2.5 months to 2.5 books every month. The first year I didn't have a smartphone, and I was like, I'm reading books cover to cover. I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to trade in puzzles all the time and just do puzzles and just lose track of time and lose track of time when I have a bunch of free time and just have that not the cheap dopamine, but the real satisfying dopamine that actually lasts and actually satisfies us. Just like we don't want you hear a lot of other analogies, you don't want the cheap dopamine of porn, you want the actual satisfaction of marital love. You don't want the cheap dopamine of a reel. You want to actually listen to a long intellectual interview or a lecture where you actually can learn something new in depth. We're not made for the surface. We're made for depth. And when I realized I'm discovering what I actually like and don't like at depth and not rotting my brain, I became just a more grateful, a happier, and someone who was better at paying attention and I became better at having conversations, which is what we all want to be able to do if we're single and looking for a spouse. You got to be able to have conversations. I found that my conversations were 10 times more interesting when I was talking about a book I was reading instead of the meme I saw on TikTok.
Yeah.
So
even if you're not searching for a spouse, conversations
that too, yeah.
and connections and everything like that are just, that's where so much growth comes.
And what kind of parent do you want to be? Forget being single looking for a spouse. What kind of parent do I want to be? What kind of mentor do I want to be? What kind of grandparent do I want to be? I want to be someone who's always bettering myself and always investing in what actually will satisfy me. I don't want to eat the Dorito chips and then want to eat 10 more bags because it doesn't fill me up. I want to eat the real meal. And like
Exactly. And that's what I
social
was going to
media,
mention. That fast food analogy is a perfect one because, like, we're being fed basically this really terrible food 24/7, whether it's social media or short form content or anything like that. And you mentioned earlier, like, the podcast. If people are listening to this podcast, it's great. I don't want you to stop here.
yeah,
Like, I want this to be an inspiration. And I mentioned in my last podcast, every time I invite someone on my podcast, I tell them, I want to hear about the joy in your life. It doesn't necessarily need to be a theological lecture.
it could
I
be a
want people
puzzle
to
that you're
see the
doing.
joy of living out the faith and then be inspired to go live it outside of the podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like my favorite author, he's secular, he's not Catholic, but my favorite author around the digital issue that when I first became a digital minimalist that I started reading is Cal Newport, and he uses the term social snacking to describe social media scrolling.
Really?
Yeah, like you're getting the bits and pieces, you're getting the snacks, but how much more do you actually want the full meal? Like when you snack so much, you don't have the appetite for the real meal. And like you can also make the faith analogy there of like how like the heaven is compared to a feast, like a wedding feast. Like
Oh,
don't you
yeah.
want the
Yeah.
like don't you want to feast and not
Yeah. Beautiful.
just get the cheap stuff? Like so when I started
Yeah.
thinking about that I was like, yeah, I actually have no desire for a smartphone. I have no desire to be on social media. I did make I do some online stuff and I'm gonna have online resources for the dating initiative that I'm starting, but I recognize like this is not for myself. It's for service. So I'm online for
Yeah.
service. I have an
Yeah.
Instagram account for this initiative for service. I have a podcast for service. I am going to be offering coaching on Zoom, and I'm going to be interviewing for podcasts and recording my own podcast and offering ebooks and offering because I can reach more people. Like that is what the goodness of online is it's a tool to evangelize and
Yeah.
serve, and that's what I'm using it for. I'm not using it for my own pleasure, and that is the very simple rule book I live by in my life is I'm online for others and to serve and to use a tool that is neither good or evil for the good of the church and the good of the people that I want to reach, which I can reach more
Yeah.
people online, but it's not for my own gratification. And when I have
That's the
that,
paradoxical. That's the paradoxical nature of our work. Is like ultimately we kind of want to go out of business, at least with like the individual. The problem's never going to subside, but like we want to have people graduate from this
yeah,
and move on and meeting them where they're at. And there's a few things you mentioned there. One of which being kind of like the car rides or those things. I preach so often about sanctifying those tiny moments throughout your life and how we
mhm,
have so many more of them than people realize, but we just fill them with noise.
yep,
Um, and it's a Pascal quote. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
hmm,
And
I agree. Hmm.
that couldn't ring more true.
Yeah,
And whenever I make intentional time to go and do that, I feel so much better.
hmm,
And that's why I love the food analogy too. Because
yeah,
when you eat a healthy food, when you eat a nutritious meal, you feel more energized than when you're snacking all day. And when you're alone with your thoughts and you're allowed to contemplate and you're allowed to be with the Lord and you're not just filling up your mind and your heart with noise,
yeah,
you feel so much better. And like you said, feeling is not faith, but it does encourage you to, like, when you have those encounters, to continue working on it.
exactly. I 100%. I couldn't agree more.
That's awesome. Monica, where can people find you? I'm going to link some stuff in the show
Yeah,
notes, but
yeah. So you can find me three places. I have a website. It's called dfwcatholicdating.com. That's the link. It'll be in the show notes. I have an Instagram. The handle is DFW Catholic Dating. And I have a brand new podcast called Catholic Dating in the Digital Age, which I will also have Tyler link those in the show notes. You can find me there. You can subscribe to my newsletter on my website. And I'll also have him link the newsletter in the show notes. And the waitlist is active for my January 2026 launch of my new Catholic singles meetup groups. And I want as many people in the know as possible for them. And yeah, the way you can support me is you can either work with me, but if we're not a fit or that's not what you're interested in, totally cool. If you can follow my podcast on Spotify, follow my podcast on Instagram, or stay in on my newsletter so you can, send what I'm launching to your friends. That will be another way to support me and support the initiative and help me grow online. Because when I was just running the speed dating events, I was posting in the group me's and that's it, which is great, but you can't Google, search for a dating resource or a way to meet people and have a group me event pop up, right? So I'm trying to expand to where anybody in Dallas-Fort Worth that is single and is searching for it on Google can find it. And that's why I'm online. So anything you can do to help me gain favor with the algorithm is something that you can, is a free way that you can help me.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure to do that. If you're listening, do that.
Yes.
You're doing great work. So I love everything that you're doing here. We do end the show in a fun way.
Mm-hmm.
We have the rapid fire round.
Okay.
We have 1 minute to answer the 5 questions.
Okay.
I'll start the timer after
I
read the first question.
Okay.
Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All righty. Who is your favorite saint? And if you had one day to spend with him or her, what would you ask or do?
My favorite saint is St. Catherine of Siena because of her boldness and because of her courage to do what's right and not what's easy. If I had one day to spend with St. Catherine of Siena, I would just want to get coffee with her and ask her as many questions as possible. And I would want to just spend time. I would want to be a fly on the wall in her day so that I can be a creature of imitation and learn how to live just like her.
Very cool. What is your most controversial take on a Catholic topic?
Yeah, my most controversial take is definitely that Catholic dating is a lot more complicated than it should be. That's actually not that controversial now that I think about it. My controversial take is that Catholic dating is simple, but not easy. Like, I think a lot of people don't think it's that simple, but it's meant to be simple. And whenever I say that, I do notice that people get very defensive. So that's why I would say that's a more accurate version of my hot take.
There you go. What is one modern habit that you believe most weakens people's faith?
Scrolling on social media addictively. That one's easy.
Okay. Veil or no veil?
That's actually a very interesting question. I used to be very much like I veil no matter what. Like it's what I, but I've become a lot more like, I used to also think that like all women should veil all the time. It's no question. It's like dogmatic almost. But now I'm very much like I definitely think that if you feel called to, then do it. But if you're doing it because you think you should, then it's actually more of a distraction. And I can say that from personal experience.
What single virtue would you want to be remembered by?
I would want to be remembered by, well, I don't want to say faith because that's a theological virtue. I would say I would want to be remembered by fortitude. Like I keep going even when it gets hard, and I don't give up when everything around me wants to give up. Like that's what I want to be remembered by. I want to be someone that no matter what I've done in life, no matter what I feel called to do, no matter what action I take, I do it, even if every part of me doesn't want to do it, because it's the right thing to do and it's what God asking me to do. So I want to be remembered for fortitude.
Awesome. That's a great answer. And we can all pray for that. I'll pray for your fortitude through the Catholic speed dating initiative that you're doing, and our own fortitude as well as we go off into the world.
Absolutely.
I appreciate having you on here. Any last words for the listeners?
Nope. Thank you guys so much for listening.
All righty. You mind closing us off in prayer, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Our Lady of Loretto, pray for us.
Pray for us. Thank you very much. I'm going to have you stay on the podcast, and while everything uploads. But thank you so much for being on.
Of course.